keep putting a P in his name.
Kevin.
Kevin.
K-Dog. K-Bone. Can we get a crickets? Just like audio cue right?
Was it Arthur Blank's cooking?
Was it the steaks?
Do I do it? It's Friday. Gotta get down on Friday. Hello, Falcons fans. I'm going to regret that.
That was so good. That was amazing.
This is what happens when you put me in the host chair. I am Terrin Waack, joined by Will McFadden.
Hi, Will.
A little bit of role reversal here today because it's the off season and we want to keep things interesting, just like the Falcons have been as of late.
Yeah, they have.
I was waiting for a good one.
Anything going on?
Yeah, they kind of wait before we get there. We do have some housekeeping to address. On Tuesday, there is going to be a press conference, depending on the weather, for the big news we are about to address. Wow, I really should just let you go with it. But regardless, that'll be streaming on AtlantaFalcons.com on all platforms. And then the next time we have this show will be next Friday, and I won't sing Rebecca Black then. So this was a one-time opportunity.
You won't have to. It was recorded.
I know.
I regret to inform you, and now we have that whenever we want it.
Aren't people throwing it back to 2016? I'm basically on brand.
Yes.
And then my third matter is, because we don't have a question of the day, I'm going to ask Will a joke.
You're going to ask me a joke?
I'm going to ask you a joke.
Ask me that joke.
That's not how that's phrased, is it? Anyways, why was Cinderella so bad at football?
Can we get a crickets, just like audio cue right? Why was she so bad at football? I mean, my first thought obviously goes to slipper, glass slipper. No.
Let's not waste too much time.
Is this? Yeah. Why?
She kept running away from the ball.
There you go. I like that. That was a good one. I'm saving that as the resident dad on the podcast. That is mine now. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate
and now we
that.
can get to the news.
What news? You keep. I'm not certain there is news.
I keep hinting at this
Taryn,
news.
you keep teasing me with the news. Let me have it.
The Falcons have their 20th head coach.
What? When?
Well, he might have been asleep considering it was announced at 10 p.m. Saturday night. His name is Kevin Stefanski.
Kevin. K-Dog. K-Bone.
Oh. Anyways. To give a little timeline to all this, the Falcons finished their first interview with Stefanski on January 11th. So that was a 6-day turnaround to figure out that he is their guy. Stefanski was the Browns head coach from 2020 to 2025. In his first season, the Browns went to the playoffs for the first time since 2002. A whole adult could have been born in that time period, 18 years. They did so again in 2023 with Stefanski, and in both those seasons, Stefanski was named AP Coach of the Year. Ding-a-ling-a-ling. That's big. Anyways.
That's the big one.
That's a big award.
Tippy-top award.
That's a big award. Well, when the news came out, you also had Matt Ryan, the president of football, speak on it. You had owner Arthur Blank speak on it. And then Stefanski gave his little input too. So let me give you a little bit of what they had to say. Matt Ryan said Stefanski is a lead by example leader. He, quote, puts a premium on accountability for everyone and a player-driven culture. Arthur Blank said, in Kevin Stefanski, we have found a coach with the right vision, focus, and demeanor to lead our team into the future. This is going to make everyone cheer. He also said, our objective is to win games and contend for championships every year. And that is where our shared focus will remain.
Yay!
Ooh, applause. The crowd goes wild. Stefanski said, there are many talented players on our roster. Keyword our, that was fast, that I cannot wait to coach. All right, so those are the facts, the quotes that can all be found online. Hello, AtlantaFalcons.com. Will, can you explain to me so I can stop talking why all this is good for the Falcons?
I thought you did a great job, Taryn.
I was running out of breath.
Yeah, it's hard to kick off the show. But no, I think that ultimately, there were a lot of different ways that the Falcons could have gone in this coaching cycle. And anytime anybody approached me asking what kind of my thought was on who they should hire, I really had a hard time kind of figuring out even where I landed, right? Because given the fact that Matt Ryan is now here as president of football, feels like that being a new position, this is going to be a little bit of a pivot from maybe where they had aligned or were on the runway, towards in the last 5-6 years, right? So given that, I kind of thought a ton of options were on the table. You could tell me it's a first-time head coach in Clint Kubiak or Joe Brady. You could have told me it's a defensive guy like Jesse Minter, right? Or John Harbaugh, special teams, like longtime head coach. Ultimately, I think Kevin Stefanski kind of like is the best middle of the Venn diagram of kind of everything that you're looking for. He, as you mentioned, 2-time coach of the year. So he's experienced, right? Yeah, I know. We need like a little golden light on top and just the twinkly music. So he's got the experience and he's got a proven track record of success. And then when you dig a little bit deeper into kind of like specifics and details, his background offensively, I think, is very appealing to Atlanta because it matches a lot of where they have been, both under Arthur Smith. Like if you look at Kevin Stefanski's personnel usage, a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of 13 personnel. So he likes tight ends. And kind of going back and even looking at like 2022, 2021, where the teams ranked, Atlanta and Cleveland were kind of like right near each other in terms of some of their personnel packages. So I think offensively, the roster that you have kind of lines up nicely probably for what he wants to do. And then, of course, and we'll kind of get into more of the other coaching news, but keeping Jeff Ulbrich and kind of allowing somebody to say, hey, like defensively, you've got this in a good place. I'm going to trust you. I wonder how much of a factor that was. Like, obviously, if a head coach came in with their clear defensive coordinator, I don't think that was going to necessarily dissuade any of the decision makers if they felt that head coach was the best candidate, right? Like, that's what we heard Arthur Blank say. That's what we heard Matt Ryan say. But I just think that Kevin Stefanski kind of has the clearest vision, steps into a situation where he's going to be able to implement that vision probably rather quickly. And the Falcons are a roster that are ready to compete. That is part of the reason why this change is being made, is because the expectation has not been met, and the expectation is that this is a playoff team. So for all of those reasons, I kind of think that Kevin Stefanski wasn't just one of the like hottest names out there on the coaching market. He was maybe like the right name for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, and obviously I have absolutely no say in the matter and who the Falcons chose as their head coach. But thinking about them landing on an offensive-orientated coach rather than a defense did kind of make me think, okay, Jeff Ulbrich is coming back. I know you said that, yes, Arthur Blank wasn't going to pull that string or make that decision. I can't help but wonder if that was like in the back of their mind sometimes when they were looking at coaches. But you'll never know. And regardless, Jeff Ulbrich is back in Atlanta to circle that news bit. It was Stefanski's first decision as the Falcons head coach. Basically, he did take Arthur Blank's advice from 2 weeks prior because, as you were saying, he literally said you can't dictate a new head coach who their coaches are going to be. But I would certainly recommend to a new head coach that they consider Jeff based on his track record. That track record, drafting 4 defensive players, 2 of which were first rounders in edge rushers Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., and then another 2 who are finalists as we speak in this moment, AP Defensive Rookie of the Year.
2 of them. Two of them.
That is also Pierce and safety Xavier Watts. We'll get into the players a little bit later and how the coaching staff that's coming into formation as we speak will impact them.
I just noticed you have finger gloves.
I know.
Those are nice. Yeah. We got like scene Terrin over here.
Gosh. Derailed my line of thought.
I did. That's
Anyways,
exactly what I was trying to do.
I know I get super uncomfortable when it happens. But going back to Jeff Ulbrich and his track record, it most notably includes Falcons defense going from second to last, started from the bottom, to second overall. Now we're here in sacks overall. Atlanta had a franchise-high 57 sacks last season. 57. They had 31 in 2024. I say a bunch of stuff again. Will, Jeff Ulbrich is back in Atlanta. What are your thoughts on that decision?
I think it's a brilliant move. Because I thought it was a great move to bring him back. I know that when the decision was made kind of last year around this same time, right, to bring back Jeff Ulbrich, a lot of people viewed that first and foremost as, okay, Raheem Morris is bringing in a buddy, right? Mm-hmm. And while sure, they had a history together and they worked well together, I also think that just Jeff Ulbrich is a damn good defensive coordinator.
Heck yeah.
Right? He showed that in New York, and a lot of our pieces around that time were explaining that. You can go back and check him out if you want to. Terrin, you did the deep dive on, like, here's what his defenses did in New York. And weirdly, like Robert Saleh, I think gets a lot of the credit. And I'm not in the building. I don't know exactly how the breakdowns of everything went. But generally, in my time being, around NFL teams, like your coordinators are really running those units. Sometimes, you get a coach like Kevin Stefanski who's got a clear background on one side of the ball. But like that, each organization, I guess, is different, and how each head coach, whether they want to be involved or not, like depends on the individual. But I think Jeff Ulbrich had a ton to do with the defensive success that they had in New York. And the fact that he was able to kind of, in year one, now they weren't a top 5 unit or anything like that, but for like half of the year, I feel like they were, right? And once you saw the season kind of like during that 7-game slide, that's where I think you saw some of the season overall numbers start to like kind of creep back towards the middle of the pack a little bit. But for like 5 weeks there, they were the number 1 defense in DVOA, right? And they were doing that with 4 rookies out there on the defense. So that is where I think Jeff Ulbrich is a phenomenal teacher. I think he understands clearly what he's trying to do and then is able to effectively communicate how each of the 11 defenders fit into that vision. And he gives them kind of a very clear mindset to adopt, right? We're an attacking style defense. I want you to play on your front foot. Don't worry about anything else. Like don't read and react. Go get them. And they went and got him last year, right? So that is where I think keeping Jeff Ulbrich maintains some consistency for a side of the football that has largely been defined by like inconsistency over the last 5 years. You think of all of the different defensive coordinators that group has had, from Dean Pease to Jimmy Lake to Ryan Nielsen, and now Jeff Ulbrich. And it's going to be nice, I think, to have the same voice in the room, the same kind of teacher, and the same vision, which is going to allow the personnel side and the scouting side to kind of say, okay, we know what we're looking for exactly because we were looking for it last year, and now we've got a year of experience kind of getting those same archetypes. So I love it for the players, and I really think that you can see Atlanta's defense maybe build on this and continue to take a step forward in some of the other areas because we saw what they did in the pass rush.
If you want to know more about Jeff Ulbrich as a coach and as a human being, make sure to check out AtlantaFalcons.com's Heart, Mind, Fist feature. Me, and Tori McElhaney each kind of took one of those entities and explained what it means for the defense and why this is Ulbrich's mantra. And I really think you saw that on a week-to-week basis with the defense, and probably will in 2026 too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you saw the kind of like takeaways, the ball hawking mentality, noticing just every time they were going in to make the tackle, they're also trying to kind of punch the ball out. We saw the evolution towards the end of the year with like rushing 4 as opposed to blitzing a lot. But you also, I think, saw a fearlessness from Jeff Ulbrich as a coach to say, how do I as a coach embody kind of that attacking mindset I want my players to adopt out there on the field? What they do, they blitz to the second highest rate in the league, right? So if you're not going to be kind of pressing that joystick forward enough, I'm going to grab your thumb and I'm going to go ahead and press it forward for you because we're just going to dial up a play that makes you attack, right? So
Great analogy.
Thank you.
I love a good analogy.
I like what Jeff Ulbrich brings.
Well, Jeff Ulbrich is someone we know a lot about. The second hire Stefanski made official, we don't know a lot about. Well, the league knows a lot about him. We don't know a lot about him personally in Atlanta just yet, and that is Bill Callahan as the offensive line coach. His resume, my gosh. I question, when are you going to retire? It's so long already. He has 4 decades of experience. He started coaching as a graduate assistant at the University of Illinois in 1980. He became an offensive line coach for the first time in 1987 at Northern Arizona University. From there, he stayed with the offense throughout the rest of his career. Callahan's first NFL game came in 1995. I was born in that year, with the Eagles. He has since also worked for the Raiders, Jets, Cowboys, Commanders, Browns, and Titans. You'll notice the word Browns in there. He and Stefanski did overlap. That's the tie here. Tori McElhaney wrote the newser for that story. I was in Miami for the Natty, sad Canes. And she said he is one of the most decorated and respected offensive line coaches in NFL history. Will, what does this hire mean for the Falcons specifically?
You know, it's on the one hand, like, I think a little bittersweet, right? Because the job that Dwayne Ledford has done as Falcons offensive line coach has really been spectacular. You know, like when
5
you
years,
look
right?
at I believe so. Yeah, he was here with Arthur Smith, retained with Raheem Morris. And honestly, he's like kind of grown up with this offensive line group that Atlanta has here in place. And if you look at just kind of the entire team, I would say that since 2020, like maybe the offensive line, you could say running back, right? But like those two are so closely tied together, has been like the most consistently successful unit. Like year in and year out, we know what they can do in the run game, but I think
Bijan Robinson.
Exactly. I think they've made so many strides in pass protection as well, especially not so much in 2025, but 2024. I think they did a really good job. But even last year, they only gave up 26 sacks, right? So the work that Dwayne Ledford did, I don't think should be discredited, even though they are bringing in Bill Callahan.
Right.
It's just that I think one day Dwayne Ledford hopes to have that kind of resume that Bill Callahan has.
Yeah, that's just how the industry works.
It is.
It's never a knock on the person before.
Right. And I think a big part of this, too, is just the familiarity that Stefanski has working with Bill Callahan, who only really left the Browns to go to Tennessee to work for his son, Brian Callahan, right? So, like, that was a little bit of an extenuating circumstance.
That's special.
There, yeah. It's not as though he left the Browns on necessarily bad terms or wanted to get out of like this was an extenuating circumstance. But just the experience that he's had in the league, I think is going to be so beneficial for these guys on the offensive line, given where they are now in their careers, because even Matthew Bergeron now is entering year 3, right?
Which is crazy.
Yeah. So like these guys grow up right before your eyes. Jake Matthews is like, I mean, 100 years old, it feels like at this time in comparison.
NFL years, probably.
Yeah, he probably feels 100 years old at times, even though he's still got many great games ahead of him. But it's kind of like the point I'm making is that as somebody who has so much experience, decades and decades of experience, not only is he going to be coming in here with a different perspective, having not worked with this group before, but he's coming in with so much perspective that I think it will give him a little bit of more credibility maybe in the room. And it's just going to be a different approach than the one Dwayne Ledford went with. Now, I still think that offensively, stylistically, you're going to see a lot of the same things. I would expect them to keep that wide zone, outside zone area of attack in the run game. So the coaching points might kind of be the same, but the lessons applied, the just demeanor, the overall kind of way of going about it is going to obviously be different because Bill Callahan is not Dwayne Ledford. So it was a little bit of a surprising move, but one that's understandable given who is coming into the building.
For sure. While we were talking about all of his experience and then you calling Jake Matthews 100 years old,
Sorry, Jake.
I think it would be a dream situation to sit down in like, I'm picturing like a cigar room with like leather chairs with those two and just listen to stories and like hear them trade intel like that, because they both have such different perspectives as coach and player, but have both been seen so much throughout their days.
The Centenarian Cigar Lounge. Yeah.
Is that an actual place?
No, I just made it up.
Okay.
Yeah. But we're going to make it an actual place. Jared, that's your next assignment.
Get us a
Build
bar.
us a lounge. Build us a whole cigar lounge.
Well, and when we made this outline for this show, at that point we hadn't had the news that dropped on Thursday. Today is Thursday afternoon. Literally about 30 minutes ago, news came out that Tommy Rees was named the Falcons offensive coordinator. Talk about overlap. He also worked with Stefanski in Cleveland. You have another overlap in Jacqueline Roberts, who is the coordinator of manager of coaching operations here in Atlanta, was the coordinator of coaching logistics in Cleveland. The Falcons also retain Dave Huxtable, Nick Jones, and Michael Petrie from last year's staff with the same titles. So just wanted to put that in there to get you all informed out there in the wild. But now we will carry on with our script, which, to circle back to talking about James Pierce Jr., Jalen Walker, a little bit of Bijan Robinson. We don't even want to touch the quarterback yet. That's coming up. But what do these coaching additions, especially Kevin Stefanski, mean for the roster? There are 29 impending free agents, according to Over the Cap. And the most notable are Bradley Pinion, obviously, Leonard Floyd, Caden Ellis, Kyle Pitts Sr., David Onyemata, D. Alford. Like, a lot of them are defensive heavy, which is interesting when you're retaining the defensive coach. So I'm wondering how all this is going to play out this offseason.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. I think first and foremost, given that inconsistency that I mentioned, at least in terms of like your defensive leadership, right? When you talk about a player like David Onyemata, while he is a great player and a veteran, like 34 years old, right? So he's a little longer in the tooth as well, and he wasn't a Jeff Ulbrich guy who was brought in here, right? So while there is a lot of benefit to having a player like that, there isn't necessarily that clear connection to Jeff Ulbrich and Nate Ollie, right? So that's usually where my mind goes first when you look at free agency, connection between coaches and players, because that familiarity is so important. But having said that,
right.
I do...
Caden Ellis?
I do think, like... Caden Ellis is an amazing player that I would want back on the Atlanta Falcons because of how much he can do and how I think Jeff Ulbrich, like, it's not that he unlocked him because he was doing it the year previously as well, but having a player like that is so beneficial, I think, to a defensive coordinator because he is a little bit of your queen on the chessboard.
Mm-hmm.
And
we love a queen.
There we go. We stand a queen. And I think that, like, hearing him during training camp, you can tell the amount of admiration that Jeff Ulbrich has for Caden Ellis. So, again, it's so early, like we can't really speculate exactly on who is coming because like we haven't even heard from Kevin Stefanski yet.
Right.
So I have no idea of like he may be like, we're playing linebackerless football. Surprise. I don't expect him to say that.
That would be wild.
But it would be wild. Offensively though, I think I mentioned kind of the 12 personnel, 13 personnel usage. Obviously, that comes with like a big question about Kyle Pitts, the way he finished the season. I know a lot of people have tossed out franchise tag. Like, I think that could be in play if they don't want to have him. Like you look at what David Njoku did, Harold Fannin Jr. this past year. Cleveland has used their tight ends, and I think Kevin Stefanski has always found it valuable. I'm putting words in his mouth here, but for a young quarterback, having a tight end is often a safety blanket. So it wouldn't shock me if that is a position that they try to address early on. You already have Charlie Warner in place. We know what he can do. He's a really good blocker. He's a great asset in that room. But do they try to bolster that out? And then how does that maybe trickle down to wide receiver, which is a position group that I have been kind of most curious about this offseason, because I do think they could still stand to maybe add one more piece and have kind of like three of those starting caliber guys. No slight to David Sills or Chris Blair or any of the guys kind of in that Dylan Drummond in that room. But if they're going to be running a lot of 12 or 13 personnel, like then I don't know how much of a priority that becomes. And then the last little bit is Tyler Algier, right? Now, the luxury of having two running backs is I think a luxury, but
especially that caliber.
Exactly, right? Like Tyler Algier could be a starter for probably half of the teams in the league tomorrow. And how valuable is that, right? We know that Bijan Robinson is all world, led the league in scrimmage, very happy to give him the ball.
AP award?
Yep. I'm very happy to give him the ball as often as possible, but how much do they want to lean on that run game, and how much do the individual skill sets kind of matter? That's what I'm looking at when it comes to free agency. And I think offensively, that like the offensive side of the ball is probably going to be the focus here after a lot of defensive stuff last year.
Okay, so if they're going to prioritize the offense, the biggest question mark, once again, is the quarterback position. Michael Penix Jr. is recovering from that season-ending knee injury surgery that he had done in November. Kirk Cousins' contract was reportedly restructured, but he has history with Stefanski. My biggest question for I keep Stefanski, but it's not it. It's Stefanski. I keep putting a P in his name.
The most self-assured you get is when you get mad at yourself. It's so funny. You're just and then you like refocus and center on your set, and you're like, and then everything comes out so clear. It's amazing. I love it.
I'm really good at going, skirt, keep going. The biggest question for Stefanski, and hopefully Tuesday, given the weather, press conference is, what's the plan for QB1 entering training camp?
I mean, you just mentioned the biggest wrinkle of it all, right? Is that Kevin Stefanski has history with Kirk Cousins.
I know. Talk about throwing a wrench into the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like I mentioned. Whoa, it slides.
Don't break the chair.
Yeah, I know. I mentioned kind of Kevin's offense. I call him Kevin like we're best friends. Sorry, Coach.
At least you say his name correctly.
Mr. Stefanski. It ports over really, really well. Part of that is because it's very similar to, I think, what a lot of the players here have run previously, even though the terminology might be different. There might be some extra packages, some nuances. But Kirk has quite literally been with this coach. I'm not sure what the play calling duties are, how that's all going to work out and everything, but the language shouldn't necessarily be entirely new to him. And how valuable is that, right? I don't know. That is the question.
I'd like to think a lot, but I've never been a quarterback of an NFL offense, oddly enough.
I mean, well, the person who kind of has final say, he has. So that matters, I do think. And that is actually something that we probably shouldn't lose sight of in all of this, because if there is one position on the team that you want to make as comfortable as possible, it is quarterback. Mm-hmm. There should be some comfort between Kirk Cousins and Kevin Stefanski, a lot of comfort between those two. I mean, we saw in the quarterback documentary, kind of like in Zach Robinson offense, there was a lot of motions, and Kirk was kind of commenting on that early, right? And so even these little small things, when you're the one running the show, they can be big things, and you got to remember them all, and you've got to have everything down. You know, there have been a couple of fumbles this season with the timing of motions and things like that. I don't expect you to have those hiccups if Kirk Cousins is here with Kevin Stefanski, just given, again, the familiarity and the comfort of that offense. And I think it's a little bit more of the traditional play action, wide zone, under center style of offense that we did see from kind of the Kyle Shanahan offense, the Kubiak offense, and a little bit more of your traditional kind of like West Coast based offense. So whether or not that means Kirk Cousins will be here in Atlanta, I have no idea, because the contract is obviously a big factor in all of this. Yeah. So Kirk Cousins part aside, right? We know that Mike has undergone surgery successfully and is working through his rehab. What the timeline is, I don't know. Not a quarterback and not a doctor. Nope. As much as I would like to be one or play one on TV, I'm not. So when does he make it back on the field? And furthermore, when is he back to full health? Mm-hmm. Right?
Because you don't want to rush that.
No, you don't. And I mean, we've seen, unfortunately, the Falcons have kind of seen what some of the limitations are maybe for a quarterback, even though I expect it, Kirk Cousins was healthy last year, right? But anytime you're dealing with the lower body stuff, you kind of hold your breath sometimes. And if they really do want to do an under center play action rollout based type of attack, that's going to be a lot to put on a player coming off of knee surgery. So I agree, they're going to have a plan in place. And I would imagine that whoever is in here in training camp, if they perform well, you give them a look, even though Michael Penix is the quarterback of the future and is still very much the franchise quarterback here, you need to win football games. Mm-hmm. And that should be the focus. So whoever you can bring in, whether that is Kirk Cousins and you figure out a plan with his contract, whether that is somebody is kind of like a 1 year off the street free agent who you feel really good about, kind of like Marcus Mariota with Arthur Smith in that first year, there are options they can take. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I expect Michael Penix Jr. to be the plan moving forward, though.
Oh, yeah. But whether that's week 1 has yet to be determined and won't be determined until August rolls around.
Right.
What are some other questions? You're leaving me. You're going on paternity leave before good old Kevin's press conference, and y'all are buddies apparently.
I know, I'm gonna high five him on the way out of the building.
Deuces. Why don't we just talk through our plan my plan now for that?
Yeah, I'm here to
the quarterback. The quarterback has to be a topic of conversation at the press conference.
100%.
I think you already asked about play calling. Because like you said, that depends. Is it going to be Stefanski? Is it going to be the OC? Are you going to bring a third party? Likely not. But you don't know. That's another thing that could factor into all these decisions. When then you ask about free agency, how does money want to be spent? I don't even know that you can talk about draft desires because you don't have a GM in place just yet, which, as a reminder, those interviews will be announced on AtlantaFalcons.com when complete as of this podcast right now at 1:58 p.m. on Thursday, there has only been one. So keep an eye out for those as they come out, and so will we. Play back into the conversation. Like, there's so many questions. What would you prioritize?
I think a natural first one is we've heard from Arthur Blank, we've heard from Matt Ryan on this, but just hearing from the coach and then eventually the general manager, like how is the structure working, right? Like
it is different.
Yeah. What does it mean to you to work with Matt Ryan? Like to hear from kind of the coach and get their take on just the support that they will have from Matt Ryan in the president of football role is going to be important. And then I think really like I'm so fascinated by the dichotomy of the offense and the defense and Stefanski coming in here after like Jim Schwartz, who he has had in Cleveland, has been very successful. Myles Garrett just like set the record for single season sacks. Like that's crazy. And so I was doing a little bit of digging into Jim Schwartz and kind of like his philosophy on defense. And he's been kind of successful a lot of different places. It's not too dissimilar from Jeff Ulbrich's, right? It's rush 4, it's playing on your front foot, it's like kind of taking the ball away on the back end. I would imagine a lot of defense coordinators around the league say something similar, but getting Stefanski's thoughts directly on Jeff Ulbrich and kind of like, did Cleveland and New York play? I'm sure they did, being in the AFC. Like what was that experience like? That would be a big question of mine. And then I think you pivot to roster. You mentioned quarterback, but some of these other marquee players that have been impactful and important for Atlanta in the last couple of years, Caden Ellis, Kyle Pitts, Tyler Algier. Yep.
Jinx.
There you go. Even D. Alford. I taught Liam what Jinx was the other day. It was so cute. But yeah, like all of these kind of like further down the line item list questions or with players, like that's going to be, I think, the bulk of where we get to next. But like in the off season with the coaching and kind of like the decision making, the big overall question though that I think thematically I would want to get at in this press conference is just like, why Atlanta, right? Like what did Kevin Stefanski feel?
Was it Arthur Blank's cooking?
Was it the steaks? Was it the steaks? Are we talking, was it a tomahawk ribeye or was it just a regular, like what kind of steaks, what seasoning? Was it just salt and pepper? Or do you have like a little paprika in there?
Like, can you please break down that dinner? I want to know the entire menu.
Should we just turn this into a food podcast right now? What kind of sides are we doing? Are we doing whipped potatoes? Are they mashed potatoes? What kind of greens are we working? Yes. Oh. Yes, gosh.
Okay, maybe we shouldn't have the food podcast then.
Welcome to my master class.
Why Atlanta? There are 8 other teams looking for a head coach because the first domino fell was the Giants, then the Falcons, and now 8 remain, I believe 10 total.
Yeah, some keep opening
like
up. Right?
A lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. So why Atlanta and why so quickly? Like, the NFL season's not even over.
No. The argument also could be made, and this is like fascinating to me, is that he may be going to a better situation than the one he left, even though the Cleveland Browns went to the playoffs twice with him as head coach, which I think is also part of the calculus here if you're Atlanta. You kind of look at Cleveland's roster, you look at your roster, and you say, okay, yeah, we don't have a Myles Garrett, but we just drafted a James Pierce Jr. and a Jalen Walker, right? We got Brandon Dorr. Like we've got these pieces in place. I love Atlanta's secondary. I think it's better than Cleveland has a very good secondary, but I like Atlanta's a little bit more. The running game, Quinshon Judkins did great. I like Bijan Robinson. So you start doing that game, and Cleveland's had its own issues with the quarterback situation. Kevin Stefanski has been able to overcome those and make the playoffs twice, kind of given that.
That is a big point.
So an argument could be made that like he's leaving a situation and actually going into a better one. So like I would want to hear him and like his take on kind of that whole situation, what you're leaving and what you're gaining, and kind of the optimism he feels about getting this group into the playoffs is probably where I start. I
want to know how he did it in 2020 because the Browns hadn't been to the playoffs in 18 years. Year one as head coach.
I was shocked that they weren't in 2007.
Make the playoffs.
That 2007 season is like the only thing I know about the Browns.
Yeah, but he wasn't on the staff, so I don't care.
I know. Yeah.
He wasn't on the staff, so it doesn't matter right now. Fine, even if we go 2007 to 2020.
Yep.
Like, how did you show up and turn that program around to where it is going to the playoffs in your first year as head coach? Like that to me is what Atlanta should be looking at, being like, okay, he did it there, he can do it here.
Yeah.
Like drought, rainfall.
Yeah, bring
Too
the
much
rain.
weather talk.
Bring the rain.
Forget the food.
One other thing you just made me think of is like we've talked a little bit about over the last couple of years. Raheem Morris, like usually around training camp time, is like, hey, the identity like is borne out on the field by the players. What's Kevin Stefanski's thoughts on that? You know,
He's gonna show me like, this is the identity,
right?
And everybody better follow it. And I'm gonna be like, whoa.
He's like,
this is different.
I put the I in identity. It's me. It's my identity. No.
That would be as crazy as a third person calling the plays. A random third entity.
Yes, the unnamed assistant, the offensive assistant.
AI.
That would be amazing. Yeah, so just kind of getting his thoughts on like what's the team's identity, what do you want this group to be about, and like how are you going to handle your business moving forward?
And do you care that there's no first round draft pick?
That's a good one too. Yep.
Thank you.
How do you attack this offseason with no first round draft pick? Which
that'll be huge for the GM whenever
I think
he or she comes in.
He's only had like 3 first round draft picks as a head coach, so it's not necessarily something he's unfamiliar with, but you know it's not what you want either.
Yeah. Hopefully, every single one of these questions will be answered with a very straightforward answer on TBD Tuesday. Mother Nature, please cooperate. I want to get to this press conference. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot. Is there anything you'd like to add? Any embarrassing stories you'd like to randomly throw in at the end of the podcast like I normally do?
No. I am perfect at all times, Terrin.
All right. Well, on that note, everyone, the Friday Five say toodaloo to William for a while now. He's going to be a full-time father for a little bit.
You switched it on me.
I guess not for a little bit. Like you always are full-time. You know what I mean.
I'm a full-time daddy.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone, make sure you like, listen, subscribe. Maybe don't comment. But tune in next Friday for your next Falcons Friday 5. I'm Terrin Waack, joined by Will McFadden. Thank you. Es viernes.
Bye.